Gabriel is the main picture there on the screen. He's much better looking than me, so we want to have him the focus. Yep, good. That's thank you, Bert. Correct. G'day, Ellie. Good to see you. You're definitely live. Excellent. Thank you, Ellie. And we are just pushing live on Facebook as well, and YouTube will be up in a second. The internet. Don't you love it?
What a time to be alive.
Cool.
Well, Alexandre, this is what I normally say is when we do tastings in the back room here at the Oak Barrel, we sort of let doors in at 6:15. So this is the period where everyone's coming in and finding a seat and just sitting down and having a look at what's going on.
That's great.
I'm usually trying to run to the car to grab the last bottles that I forgot to get there during the day.
I'm doing a few shots out the back for courage.
How's the weather in Cognac today?
Cognac is pretty, you know, the weather is rainy, which is actually what we want. You know, this is what we want because, you know, it's been so dry. And, you know, so we're excited about that because, you know, the vineyards needed it. Plus, we planted new juniper berries trees. We planted bigger trees. So for us, it's really important that we get that weather. So, but it's, you know, it was very, very dry lately. That's a problem.
We're going to have to be careful to make sure I don't ask questions about juniper berries because we might spend hours talking about that and forget to talk about rum.
Oh, no, we can do both for hours as well.
Alrighty.
It's a thing when you go start talking to a customer about anything from Maison Ferrand. It's like you can fall down many different tangents.
That's true. There's a lot going on.
Yeah. The first bottle to disappear in isolation at my house was the Curacao.
Yeah, that's true. It's an easy one. You know, I actually, in a moment of despair, I used the Curacao on pancakes, and it's actually delicious. You know, you make pancakes, a little bit of you know, maple syrup and like a few spoons of Curacao is delicious.
Yeah, I can see that working.
Oh, that is cheeky.
Yeah, it is very good. It's not bad in cereals. You know, we're doing different things there, but on a pancake, it's a winner.
Lots of people coming into the room now. G'day, Shez, Paul Cook, Rod Ainsbury, Paul Hocking, Nicole. Sorry, I don't have the last name for you, Nicole, but g'day anyway.
Hello, everybody.
Actually, Phil Brooks on the chat there. He's not a big rum drinker. He's his first rum tasting, but he comes to a lot of our whiskey tasting. So I'm going to be asking, seeing what you reckon of this one at the end, Phil. I reckon I've got about 6:30 from my end. If everyone else is pretty happy. Last couple of people coming through on the chat. So if you are coming in to us on Zoom, there's a whole bunch on Facebook at the moment and a couple on YouTube. Welcome. And let's have a lot of fun tonight in a very, very special tasting. I think I've been in contact with all of you. My name is Scott Fitzsimons. I'm the one you get emails about with all these Zoom links and this sort of thing. And normally at this point in a tasting, I would point out where the toilets are, where the water is and all that thing, but I have no idea where all of that is at your house, so you're going to have to do that yourself. We are going to go through a series of plantation rums tonight from a few different parts of the world, which is very, very exciting. If you've got your pack in front of you, you'll notice that these are quite big bottles. These are 100ml bottles. Now, if we were doing this at the Oak Barrel, we would do 6 rums and we would do 15ml samples. So just be careful. You don't need to drink all 100 mils tonight because that's quite a lot. So to put that in perspective, if you're sharing with someone at home at the moment, if you pour 15 mils each, you still have more than half the bottle left to go. So either way, doesn't matter how much you drink. Please don't drive home to your bedroom tonight. Definitely walk from the lounge room to your bedroom. And act responsibly. Now, if you are in the Zoom chat, there's a few ways you can get in contact with us throughout the night. There's the chat box. You can also put up your hand, and down the bottom there's on your little toolbar there's a button called Q&A, so you can actually ask a question through that as well. Then I can get that and feed that to Alexandra. That's the same for on Facebook. If you're listening there, just shoot us a line in the chat and we can go through that. But it's 6:30 on the east coast of Australia. It's 10:30 in Cognac in France, which I think is time for rum in both hemispheres. And it's my great pleasure to welcome Alexandre Gabriel from Maison Ferrand Plantation Rum. And to sort of put into perspective how special this is we've been we've done a few plantations tastings, but Alexandre is no stranger to Australian shores, so he's in such high demand that we just haven't had a chance to get him for a tasting yet. So even earlier this year, all the bars wouldn't let him go and do anything else apart from do more bar visits. So we've finally got him. We've got him all the way from Cognac, although look, Cognac looks very sunny and beachy at the moment, which is good. But
you're right.
Yeah, my great pleasure to introduce to Alexandra, and thank you so much for joining us here from the other side of the world.
Thank you, Scott. It's a pleasure to be here. Hello, everybody. I don't know if you noticed, but I am called on the screen Debbie Gabriel. That is my wife. So I am Alexandre Gabriel. And she has done a great job putting some of the background pictures that, I want to show you instead of doing a PowerPoint. Most of it we're going to be tasting together, which is great, by the way. Thank you to the whole team, at Proof, Scott, and so on, Dub, and so on. You guys are great for organizing this, so we can do this so everybody has a bottle. I think it's a great tour de force, and I really thank you for this. So we're going to have fun, tasting 6 great rums that I'm very proud of. These are my little babies, so I'm ready to go on, Scott.
Yeah, well, let's get into it.
Well, wonderful. So for some of you who don't know me, I'm the master blender and master distiller at Plantation Rum and also at Maison Ferrand. So we do spirits we believe in. That's very important for us. We do what we think is the way to go. Sometimes it costed me a lot. When we launched the Citadel Gin in 1996 was a perfect, not good timing. But, it took a while and people finally, saw it, so I was really excited about that, but it took a long time. Now, Plantation is very dear to my heart. We launched Plantation in 1999 after much research about rum and rum making. Some of you might know, some of you might be interested to know how Plantation came to life, how a little French guy, a French cognac redneck, I live right there. I'm surrounded by vineyards as I speak with you, and not at the barrels that Debbie put in the background, but I'm surrounded by the vineyards here. And by the way, for some of you interested with cognac, the season looks extremely early. So we already have almost full leaves on the vine, which is very unique at this time of the year. Not necessarily a good thing, because that means that if we have a frost at night, we can actually lose the whole crop. Last year, this is what happened, not a full frost, but we lost a third to frost. Just for the cognac buffs, to let you know that we're not going to bed very appeased. We're just hoping that it's not going to be a frost during the night. Right now it's raining, which is helping, and it's warm. It's helping the vineyards to continue to develop. And as long as it rains, it's not going to frost. So that's the good thing. So this is what's happening on the front news of cognac making in the heart of Grand Champagne as we speak. Now, to jump in the Caribbeans, you probably wonder, why is this cognac guy ever made, a plantation rum? Well, when we use cognac, as you know, we use cognac barrels, French oak, usually either Limousin or Tronchet oak, that has been used to age the cognac. And after a while, what happens is the elements of the wood that are, just marrying with the cognac during the aging are starting to exhaust themselves a little bit. And so once in a while, you replace these barrels, much like the bourbon guys do, or to some extent, the Scottish guys do. So these barrels who are like in cognac, very expensive. A new barrel is about $1,000 US, 800 to $1,000 US. They go to a second life. In the old days, they used to go to a second life to another cognac producers. Typically, Grand Champagne producers would sell to other producers because a little secret to know, there's usually 3.5%, 3 to 4% of the cognac that was in there that is actually hiding away in the wood of the barrel itself. You know, the wood is porous, as you know, and so it absorbs some of that cognac. So you got that delicious old cognac that's actually stored into the wood of the barrel. It's funny, you know, a long time ago, I met this distributor of ours in British Columbia in Canada. And when I was explaining this during a tasting, he interrupted me and he said, Alexander, can I say something? I said, sure. You know, he says, you know, when we were kids, I want you to know, not something to do when you're a kid, by the way, but when we were kids, and he was an old man, and, you know, at the time, the traders in Canada used to import, the government was controlling the spirits, was importing a lot of whiskey in barrels all the way over there. And when the barrels were empty, they would put them outside the factory. And you know what these guys would do? The kids would put water into it, shake the barrel, and make something they called shake. And the shake was actually the whiskey they would extract from the barrel. So I can only imagine these Canadian kids getting drunk on shake, you know, by extracting some of the whiskey of the wood. Well, what happens, you got these barrels that are like soaked with delicious cognac. And I thought it would be great to see if I could sell these barrels in the Caribbean. Plus, to tell you the truth, at the time, that was 25 years ago, I wanted to go to the Caribbean and learn about rum. Rum is a delicious, incredible spirits and so diversified in its culture and so rich in its heritage. I was really longing to know more about it. And I went there. I tasted many delicious rum trying to sell my barrels. I sold some to Haiti, for example, a great distillery called Barbados, and some in St. Lucia and so on. And I loved the rum so much. I said, would you pay me in rum instead of paying me in $2? And, you know, we started bartering like this, but soon enough, you know, I was so enamored with the rum itself that we started buying rum from different people left and right, creating our own little collection. And to tell you the truth, at the beginning was mostly to make rum that we'd like to drink. We really wanted to make a delicious rum with our aging techniques, you know, and then started to read and learn and meet people, the rum masters of this world, including the late Thierry Gardère for Barbados, who was great, inspirational to me. Another gentleman that was an incredible inspiration, almost defining to me, was Laurie Barnard, the master blender at St. Lucia Distillers. So all these guys opened the doors of the Caribbean to me, and I started bringing back some rum and aging them in our own cognac barrels. And some of my friends started saying, we love that stuff, where can we buy it? And we're drinking it, and including a chain of stores in France called Nicolas. And the buyer says, you know, she's a tough buyer usually, and she says, we'd love to get some of this rum. So we didn't have a brand name, and we decided, you know, I grew up on a farm, you know, and in the Caribbean, a farm is a plantation. So we decided to call it basically the farm, which is a plantation. So that's how Plantation came to life 20 some years ago. And, you know, in 1999, we're actually ready to launch it. And some of you who are rum collectors probably remember the 1983 Jamaica, the 1986 Barbados. These are our first babies with that double aging. So, you know, that's what we've been doing with Plantation all along. So what's specific about Plantation? There's really three main things, or two main things. The first thing is we believe and we trust and we respect the fact that there are great, incredible technical heritage and cultural heritage of making rum in each countries, you know, that are rum making, the historical rum making countries. I'm thinking, you know, Barbados, Jamaica, St. Lucia, you know, and so on. These countries, Trinidad, you know, and Belize, there's incredible rum heritage that actually dates back to the 1600s. So, and each island and each country, developed a very specific way of making their rums. We call that terroir. A lot of people think terroir is just about the soil. Terroir is much more than that. It's about the soil and the plants, what we call the substrate, and of course the molasses in that case. But terroir also is about the local know-how, the culture, the way the women and the men have been making rum, and they've been fine-tuning these techniques. And today we're going to be exploring this together. We're going to explore what's actually so special about all these cultures, a bit like cooking. Think about cooking. That there is a specific cuisine in specific countries, whether you're in Singapore, where you're in different provinces of China, or if you're in Italy or in France. And in fact, within France and Italy, you're going to have different cultures that have been forced and defined by many generations, just building on one another. It's very true with rum, and this is what I find the most fascinating. So this is what we're going to be talking about. And that's the first aspect of plantation, what we call the terroir and the heritage, something that I've been humbly learning for the past 20 some years, and hopefully for the many more decades, because the more I know I need to know more things. And luckily, locally, people, give me more and more of their secrets that I keep as treasures, so we can make these delicious rums. The second aspect about plantation that's very specific, and I have done quite a few classes on this, is the magic of double aging. And the magic of double aging is very simple, is that in the old days, and something that's very ingrained, really part of the rum culture, something very specific to rum again, and something we're really trying to not only treasure, but protect. It's a bit under attack right now, which is unfortunate. The double aging is part of the rum heritage, technically, where rum was first fermented, distilled, made in the country of origin, and of course, usually went through a primary aging there. Then rum, in the old days, 99% of this rum would be loaded into their own barrels on a ship, where they're another country where they're going to be aged further, whether it is Europe, America, and so on. Australia, by the way, I don't know if you know, was a destination, a lot of Caribbean rum in the 1700s, for example, and it was transiting through London, going to Australia. And so there was this double aging that's really part of the rum culture that helped define some elements of rum, especially what's called the dock rum and the navy rum. If you're fascinated like me with this history, there's a great rum historian called Matt Pietrek. I encourage you to to check him out. He has something, a blog called The Cocktail Wonk. And as the name doesn't indicate, it talks mostly about rum and not so much about cocktail. And, Matt has been putting pen to paper as he retired from Microsoft or something. He decided to do something much more serious than the computer, is to dedicate his life to something more important, which is rum. And so this is a book that's going to come out in a few months. We don't know exactly when. That's going to talk about these great, incredible Navy rums and their heritage. What is the double aging? Well, double aging is first an aging in the Caribbeans with the Caribbean weather, the Caribbean climate, and so on. That's going to give you a fingerprint, a specific elements. But just think, by the way, an old distiller from Jamaica was saying, the way the rum is fermented and distilled is the DNA, the personality of the rum itself. The aging is the way it's going to develop, it's going to evolve, and the way it's going to be dressed. A bit like how you're going to develop a person and also how you're going to dress a person. So of course, you develop differently in different places and the environment. So that's where the rum is going to be developing differently where you age it. And rum has been playing with this, so to speak, for hundreds of years. And that's kind of one of the magic of rum. Of course, we respect 100% tropical aging, which is a more recent expression of rum, but that magic of double aging is incredible. Let me just throw a few things at you about this. In the Caribbean, you got the magic of the weather. You see here the beach where the distillery is established, West Indies Rum Distillery. We put some barrels here. We usually don't put the barrels really on the beach, but right next to the beach, actually the warehouse is literally, you know, not even 50 yards, like 30 yards from the beach. Debbie might put you, yeah, Debbie, that's great. You'll see here, this is the distillery. Thank you. I just was transported to West Indies Rum Distillery. Debbie's doing a great job with the background. Thank you, Debbie. So you see this very old distillery. Let me just move a little bit here. I cannot move too far here. You can see it. That's the distillery. It's right on Brighton Beach, and you can see here the you know, the newer columns. This is the old chimney from that was established in 1893. So that's a picture of the old distillery way before I was born. That's the late 1800s, early 1900s, where you can see this old chimney already there, and all these very, very old aging warehouse right on the beach, right? We still have them. They're right on the beach. This is where the rum is sleeping. Then the rum is then shipped in barrels to, is shipped in their own barrels to France. And what I forgot to tell you is actually, you know, and you can see here some of the guys loading the, barrels, you know, they're going to be shipped in their own barrels all the way to France. And what happens when you ship like this is you're going to have an incredible interaction between the wood and the liquid, the rum, because of the movement, but also because of the heat and the cold and the humidity, because you're going to be on a boat for weeks, and that interaction is called dynamic aging. And there's a magic about dynamic aging. Well, this is not the subject today. Some of you want to geek out on this. I'm more than happy to do presentation in a later date to tell you exactly what happens in that barrel. My grandfather always told me, you know, he was a distiller back in Burgundy, and always said, you know, it's beautiful when you put a spirit on in a barrel on a ship, and then you leave it there a few weeks and bring it back and drink it. It's smoother, it's well extracted, it's delicious. And I always thought, is that true, or is it like folklore? You know, because the old guys can tell you stuff sometimes you like, you know, are a little bit strange. You know, it's like, yes, we put a goat head in a fermenting tank. Is that a good idea? We think, let's skip the goat head. You know, these were old folklore things. So I've always been very interested by old methods, but always like, yes, let's look at it with new eyes. And sometimes you know, yes, you skip the goat head, but yes, you love the fact that double aging is magical. Well, double aging, what happens when it's within this barrel and it's actually shipping out? What happens is that you got extraction of the wood, but also you have something that happens that makes beautiful, smooth rum, because you have the interaction between elements of acidity and alcohol that marry together into what we call, volatile substances, which in that case are elements of fruit notes. So that's delicious, and that's the double aging. The last point, and I'm not going to linger on that, about plantation, we practice when the rum is back in France an old technique called élevage. And élevage is a way by which, you know, we interact with the rum by changing barrels, using humid, dry cellar, and so on, to fine-tune the aging to perfection. So that's really the DNA of plantation, what we've been fine-tuning for these past years. Scott, we're going to start tasting. If you have any question while we do this, you know, don't hesitate to interrupt me. I'm totally okay. You know, that's not a problem at all.
It's funny that you mentioned your first, you know, rum, or your first, you know, rum as a currency, paid in rum rather than money, which is something that we're quite familiar with here in Australia. And it's actually in the oak barrel here. It's the only time this ever happens is people who have old whiskey collections come and see if they want to trade for rum. It doesn't happen with anything else, not with any spirit or wine or beer, but there's always a rum collector who's trying to swap whiskey for rum. I don't know what it is. Yeah.
I don't blame them, by the way. Yeah. I totally get it. I totally get it. Well, you know, rum, tell me, Scott.
I have just a few people on the Facebook there that are requesting cocktails. So we actually have two people in the room here as well, James Dub and Jordan from Proof. So we might get some cocktail recipes off them towards the end. But
you know what we could do, Scott, if you're game with that, is that if you're okay with this, is as we present a rum, then, you know, either Dub or whoever wants to jump in to just suggest a cocktail for that specific rum. So we each are in our role, you know, I'm the master blender, master distiller, and you guys are, as I always say, I like to make the instrument. And these are the little instruments that I like to make. But you guys play the music when you make the beautiful cocktails. And of course, rums, you know, also delicious to sip, but they, you know, it's like a great chef. When you make cocktails, obviously you want great spirits. So that's what I think. And I'm always honored when I see great bartenders making beautiful drinks. You know, when I push the door, and I hopefully will be able to do this soon again, push the door of an incredible bar, and I see these guys, you know, giving me cocktails that they made with my little babies. To me, it's always a wonderful experience, you know, to be able to do this. So when you guys, what we'll do when we finish presenting one of the rums we're going to be talking about, then, you know, of course, I'll leave some room if some guys want, like, to suggest a couple of cocktails or one cocktail for each of them. Is that okay, Scott?
Sounds good to me. Just
could almost do a Mai Tai live. I think I've got the ingredients.
Okay, it's a live demonstration coming up. Don't go anywhere. Stay tuned. Just on that note, Alexandre, we're working in the order of the box tonight. Is that correct?
It's exactly correct. Yeah, we're going to start with the 3 stars. You know, which is you know, the rum that's clear in your bottle. It's slightly straw color, actually, in reality. That's what we're going to be talking at first. Exactly. Thank you, Scott. Yeah, you're showing this. I can show it to you guys as well. This is the baby right here. So you know, the 3 stars is actually a rum that we owe to our good friends. You know, I'm actually transported in Trinidad thanks to Debbie. I recognize the cellars of Trinidad. That feels like home. On the back, you see Andrew, one of the guys. You know, that's Trinidad aging cellars. What I wanted to show you, Trinidad also here, is that we use different rums that we blend together. You know, I just want to tell you a little bit how this rum was born. I never thought I was going to do a white rum because, as you know, white rum was kind of a difficult battle, usually fought by huge companies with big muscles. And remember, we're little guys, you know, Plantation, Ferrand, we're artisans of spirits. And so for us to fight these big battles is very intimidating. So we always stayed on the marketing sideline, as you know, focusing more into production. Then one day, I'm in London, I'm with a little devil that I love, you know, Paul McFadden is almost family, he's like family to us. And Paul is taking me from bar to bar, and we end up in one of the bars in, you know, it's probably 1 in the morning. And I said to Paul, by the way, did you reserve a hotel room for me? Because I'm really exhausted. And he says, let's put it this way, I totally forgot. And it's like 1 in the morning. And I am not sure I want to sleep at Paul's place. It's at the other end of the city. And we're starting to talk about this. And and then Rum, you know, he says, Alexander, these guys are my friends. You can sleep here if you want, you know. So I ended up, you know, sleeping upstairs. I remember they were all young guys, incredibly talented, by the way, but they're much younger than me. And on a very personal note, I was sleeping in this room, and there was like the door didn't really close, which was okay. I didn't care. They were smoking something next door, and it didn't smell very much like tobacco. And I even though I was not smoking myself, I went to bed both drunk and stoned, I guess. So that was the inspiration. I just wanted to put you in the context of how this rum was created in my mind, you know. And so, you know, I was kind of past the age for the full experience, but that's what happened thanks to Paul McFadden. For some people who know Paul, I think it's totally Paul. And Paul, you know, as we sit at the bar, that's an hour before all this happened, he says, Alexander, you got to make a white rum. We need the best white rum in the world. And I'm like, Paul, it's going to be a slaughter. You know, we don't have the marketing funds to be out there. But he says, leave the marketing, and you suck at marketing. And he's right. Leave the marketing and sales to us. Can you make something that's going to be out of this world? And suddenly it starts traveling in my mind that we could remember where we talked about the heritage of rum and the different terroirs and the personalities of each island. I'm starting thinking, this is cool. You know, we could actually do what people used to do in the old days, is blend different terroirs. Remember, I'm a master blender by training. You know, much like making a beautiful perfume, use these different terroirs to create the perfect marriage. And so we even thought, to tell you the truth, of the name, the 3 stars, because I thought, of course, Barbados, the birthplace of rum as we know it, the modern rum, 1650, that's first reference to rum. And then you see, you know, I was thinking Jamaica to give it some of the funk. Everybody knows Jamaica's got this nice ripe fruit note. So Barbados is that kind of base with beautiful, elegant, balanced aromatics. And then Jamaica bring off, you know, you got a little bit of cocoa beans, you got some spice, some vanilla, a bit of, you know, clove notes. That comes from Barbados. And then you're gonna have these real ripe fruits coming from Jamaica. And I'll tell you my little secret. I'll tell you actually what's in there in the blend. And then, you know, of course, white Trinidad, and Debbie showed you before the cellars. Now we're going to Jamaica, Debbie, thank you. And, you know, the cellars of Trinidad, the guys in Trinidad knows they age very well. They have a barrel program, you know, that's really impressive. So as you can, and so, you know, they work on their barrels well. So what you get with the Trinidad, actually, you get some elements of aging that I thought were very nice, such as vanilla notes with very faint notes of coconut. That comes actually from the wood. So what's in there? It's a Barbados rum. I was actually a blend of Colin and pot still, a Jamaican rum from which is a John Doe still from Long Pond, and then a Trinidad lighter rum that was aged 2 or 3 years. The Jamaica and the Barbados base was unaged, and there's a touch, very small amount of 10-year-old Jamaica to boost these fruit notes, right? So if you want to have a little smell with me, a little, you know, quickly, I don't know if you get this, but I get little notes of honey. I get little notes of cocoa bean. I get so I don't know if I get that honey right there. You know, a little
very creamy on the nose as well. Very soft.
You're right. You get the cloves, the old spice, quite delicate. You know, we didn't want to create, you know, rum, the white rums that were available before 3 stars. Some guys tell me it's a game changer, and I'm very honored because we didn't know. We were nervous when we made it. And the idea was not to make like a heavy, you know, like agricole rum. They are delicious and they're great. That's a different thing, more grassy. We don't want to make the light rums that, you know, are mostly more like vodka. We wanted to make actually a true white rum with elements of taste, creaminess. You're absolutely right. Some baking spice. I'm reading some of the tasting notes I did, you know, at the time when we worked on them, some old documents, and I really find it there. And, you know, that's what we tried to do with this rum. And by blending these 3 terroirs, it was a wonderful thing. And it's almost unfair to somebody who's got to stick to one origin, because then you can create your perfect balance, a little bit like engineer it in a very traditional way by putting this together. Now on the palate, if you want to have a little sip with me. I got a little on the background, little notes of dark chocolate, almost a little bit of herbal zest, you know, to that, quite smooth. You know, it doesn't hit me in the face. Some bittersweet notes. I get a little bit of root beer. So some people get that, and slight notes marshmallow. So that's what we're trying to achieve with this, and that's, we called it 3 stars because for some that are very familiar with the Caribbeans, both Jamaica, Barbados, and Trinidad are very, very proud. Every country in the Caribbean is very proud of the cultures. They each so distinctive, and they each consider themselves the star of the Caribbeans. So, you know, Barbados, they think, and they are very like the aristocracy, the blue blood, very educated, very polite, very organized. Trinidad is considering Barbados very provincial, and Trinidad is like New York of the Caribbeans. And Jamaica is Jamaica. You know, Jamaica's got all this strong reggae, Usain Bolt culture, you know, that's a very assertive. culture of the Caribbean. So not to have anybody jealous, these are the 3 stars of the Caribbean in one bottle with the 3-star plantation. So I don't know if there's any question, and on this, I'll be totally open, and otherwise maybe we can get a live demonstration about a cocktail with it.
Yeah, a quick question. There's a couple there, but something that we don't see a lot in Australia, because rum needs to be a minimum of 2 years in oak before it's allowed to call rum. And you mentioned some of the ingredients that are going into this are aged. How and why do you actually strip the color to create a white rum?
We don't, at first we started stripping the color, and it really didn't work so well, when we did that, because when you strip the color with, you have to use carbon filtration. It's a great technical question, and I'm actually against it now that we tried it many different ways. So we looked at different ways how you get the tannins out, because as a bartender, when you reach out for white rum, what are you looking for? You're looking, intuitively, you're looking for rum without the tannins of the wood. This is really what you're looking. You're not trying to get a run away from flavor. You actually want flavor, but you don't want the tannins. Some drinks, especially the very heavy citrus drinks, don't work as easily with tannins. So what happens there with heavy level of tannins? So white rum in that case works. So at first, yes, we tried to see how we can take care, filter out the tannins. But then in the end, what we did, Scott, as we worked more and more with this, we're able to fine tune it by aging it in larger barrels or small vats, or actually exhausted barrels, where you would have element of age and refining, and without the tannins. To be honest with you, we even toyed with the idea of using clay pots, like a barrels that's made of clay.
The old amphoras.
So you would have the aging elements, without having the tannins in there. And to tell you the truth, we're still experiencing with that. And I was first trained about this technique by a wonderful Korean gentleman called Professor Jung in Korea when I was a kid. I was 23, 25 years old. He's still a very good friend, an older man now, very skillful about aging in clay pots. And about 10 yards from where I sit right now, there's a cellar with quite a few clay pots where we're experimenting like that. But right now, what we do, a little bit like, I don't know if you guys are familiar with this tequila called Ocho Tequila that uses a lot of exhausted barrels, so they're trying to get the aging elements without the tannins. So that's kind of the secret of that little baby.
Yeah. Just another question from the crowd, and I think this probably applies to all the rums we're going to try tonight. For some people who are maybe getting into it for the first time, the question came in from Ellie: is it best neat or with some ice? Now, personally, I drink all my rums neat, and I'm terrible at cocktails, so that's how I tend to drink everything. But do you ever experiment with ice or anything?
I don't, that's interesting. Ice is actually an interesting element. What it does to a drink, it creates some dilution, but I would always, if you drink it with ice, this is a tip from my grandmother, by the way, she's passed away now, very important in my life. And she always use a bigger ice cube, not crushed ice or whatever, because otherwise you will, I'm talking about sipping, you will water it down. Now, when you add a small amount of pure water, and my secret about ice, by the way, make sure the ice is produced with demineralized water, water that is actually not heavy into, elements of chalk, stone. And if you use bottled water, go for like the Voss or the water, you look at the mineral content, go as low as possible on mineral content. Mineral content has to be put on every bottle. But, osmotic filtration or distilled water works perfect to make beautiful ice cube. And so what you do is interesting. And what you do by bringing down the temperature, you're going to focus on different elements of flavors and aromatics. So actually, even each rum could actually will deliver different elements of taste depending on the temperature at which you drink the rum. So some people like to have like a slower delivery and so on the aromatics. And if you use ice, you're going to have an element of first the dilution that on the palate's going to give you a different feel, but also the aromatics and so on are going to shine through differently. The more aggressive one will be toned down, and the heavier ones, smoother one will be brought forward. So it's really depend on your own comfort, the way you do it. It's like, master blenders here sometimes where we want to really see what a barrel's got. We take a glass and we add a little bit of water in there to give it a shot, so it opens up a bit like a firework. That's another thing. It's called the, hydration shock to the spirits that's going to release some elements. Some malt whiskey producers, some of my friends recommend to do this. We recommend to do that also to some of the foolproof rums, to have that opening up, and it shows why we do this as master blenders. Actually, when you add a little bit of water, it actually shows some defects as well, which, as you know, when you age, you want to make sure what's happening is correct. So if you have element of potassium and so on, they will showcase right there, which is not a good thing. So that's why people do this to open up certain flavors. This is my little tips as you sip. So don't think there's a right way in that sense. Some people using the right ice cube is something that can work very well in certain instances, and also depending on your mood and your palate. We're talking about grandmother at the end of the day, like a little cognac glass with a big ice cube, for example, would be a thing. Same thing with a great, beautiful, full-bodied rum. The only thing, when you start using water and ice in a rum, make sure they are very well structured rums. If they are light rums, and Plantation doesn't produce light rums, they will disappear. They'll be diluted down to death, basically. So you want this super structured rum, so they won't be diluted down. You want elements of taste that are right there.
Yeah, cool. I don't know if there's a Dub or Jordan there that wants to jump in with a cocktail idea before we move on to the next round. Oh yeah, I can see movements. There's definitely movements.
I mean, look, it does scream daiquiri, but one of my favorite ones with this is an old Trailer Happiness drink, which was the dry daiquiri. So it flex on the sort of normal one, but with a decent measure of fresh pink grapefruit juice and also some Campari. Just kind of plays with some of that the dry notes, but because it's got that sort of funk and fatness and mouthfeel from Jamaica, it really rounds it out. But yeah, I can't go past the daiquiri on this one.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I know I've drank a lot of 3-star daiquiris. I'm sure Jordan agrees. They're delicious. So that's a good thing. Absolutely. So
absolutely agree. You both took my recommended drink. Who knew? Yeah, of course. This is flat out my favorite daiquiri rum. It's got the three best elements of all rums, of Barbados, Jamaica, and Trinidad. It's got that light fruitiness from Barbados, the dry funk from Jamaica, and then a really nice subtlety from Trinidad. But then to change things up a little bit, for those who have got the equipment or who really just want to give cocktails a bash, a Mary Pickford is one of my favorite cocktails. So that's a bit of light rum, some maraschino, which is like a cherry, a light cherry liqueur, pineapple juice, and lime served up. Or one really light, refreshing favorite that I came across in my time in Melbourne is a morning cooler, and that can be served up tall with some light rum, some curacao, lemon juice, and then just topped up with soda, and you're good to go.
Beauty. Thank you, team.
I'm getting really thirsty, even though it's 11 in the morning here.
No one will judge.
I reckon we might have some thirsty people in the crowd as well. So I reckon we should move on.
Absolutely. And I don't know, before we move to the next one, if you knows again the one we just poured, the 3 stars, I don't know if you're with me, but now, as you know, as spirits evolves in the glass when they have complexity. Now I get notes of citrus. I don't know if you're with me, but I got elements of, like almost like lemon peel, really in the background, behind like the nice, fruit notes that we talked about before. Yeah, now almost, we're gonna jump. You get that, Scott?
Yeah, but almost, maybe it's because I heard the word daiquiri said a few times, but I get like a little bit of lime there as well.
Yeah, you're right. And that's why it works so well, by the way. That's why I really like the recommendations. Now, Debbie is taking us to Jamaica. This is actually, no, if you want to leave the one that we had just before, Debbie, that was actually a still from Clarendon Distillery. I recognize it. Debbie chose some good pictures. If you see, I'm there, but more importantly, here you see where my finger is, this is Flovia. Flovia is a very talented master distiller who was trained by a guy called Vivian Wisdom, who's is a legend of rum making. And Flovia is a young woman that's got an incredible talent for distilling. And she's a little lady with a lot of brightness, incredible, you know, talent for distilling. Next to this big still, that's a retort still, you know. I think they almost look like pachyderms, you know, the Jamaican stills. That's a retort still from Clarendon, making delicious rum. So now that takes us to the original dark. The original dark is a rum I'm very proud of as well. The idea, it's like the aged brother in a way. They're different, but in a way of the 3 stars. Thank you, Scott. And the original dark, the idea here was to create a beautiful rum that be an incredible dark rum, that be flavorful, that had like, you know, baked cherries, cinnamon, prune. I mean, we'll taste, this is something that's got that molasses feel, really rummy in a lot of ways. And here, what else than having, again, like the elegance of Barbados as a base, about 2 years, 3 years, and then blending this with some very intense older Jamaican rums. You know, some of these rums in there are up to 10 and 15 years from Jamaica. They'll be showing you on the background the stills of this, you know, that make some of the Jamaican that come into this rum. So this rum is double aged like any other aged, you know, plantation rum. And again, you know, that blend, it's these 2 terroirs allow you to make an incredible rum. So we're gonna have a little nosing of this baby, you know, and then have a little taste together. And, you know, it's funny, I get this nose to Jamaica, this ripe banana that's just kind of up front, some of what we call the hogo, you know, when somebody talked to you about hogo, nobody knew, you know, I didn't know what hogo meant until Dave Wondrich explained to me. Because in Jamaica now, they call it more the rum funk. But in 200 years ago, that was called the hogo, H-O-G-O. It's a name I love, but hogo comes from the old French term. Actually, au goût means high taste, so high intensity in taste. It's almost like that gamey elements that you get from these incredible old rum. So I don't know if you're with me here, but I get a bit like a cinnamon, prune, the molasses from which it is distilled, some element of tea, tea leaves, black tea, peppercorn. And Jamaica, as you can see, is really in the background with these ripe fruit notes. And then on the palate, I get some element of dry pineapple, spicy, peppery, mineral note. And I get a drier end of the palate with yeah, like a drier palate, almost, yeah, peppery notes.
A quick
Then
question.
the back of fruits.
Quick question. When you're talking about funk, and this is again prompted by a question in the audience from Bert, thank you, Bert. When you're talking about that Jamaican funk, and it's a term that we see a lot, and I know the Cocktail Wonk website has done a lot of work on this. Is that coming from the yeast and the fermentation, do you think?
That's a great question. Is that, Bert? I like the question a lot, you know, and because it seems like a mystery, and actually, you know, when you think about rum, the taste of rum comes from what? Well, there's an order to things. First, the substrate. What do you use? You use molasses, you use what kind of molasses? So, you know, as a distiller, you want rich molasses. You want to work with shitty sugar mills, the one that extract the least. So you got this cooked sugar, basically, that's full of flavors. Molasses are very flavorful. I love to eat my cereals with molasses, actually. You know, it's like a sugar that's, you don't need to put a lot, just a little bit takes you a long way. Then what do you do with this? You use yeast, to Bert's question. Now, there's an incredible culture in the Caribbeans about yeast, about what they do with this. And we won't show you this yet. We'll show you the fermentation tank, you know, when we'll talk about the Jamaica Special Dry, and we'll touch on that. So But what happens is that depending on the yeast strain that you use, but also how long you ferment, because the longer you ferment, the more you leave time for other elements than yeast that are specific bacteria that are prepared really in these little muck pits by the distillers that are going to feed off the alcohol and feed off of the acidity to create these long chains of elements that taste like that ripe fruit and so on, that we call the Jamaican funk. So this is, to Bert's questions, comes not only from the yeast, but also from the fermentation technique and the fermentation know-how. A lot of know-how, a lot of secrecy there. I was introduced into this know-how, and very, very fascinating, very fascinating. And this is something that every distillery used to have their own secrets about, until I had a seminar I did with Dave Wondrich yesterday. If you're interested, it's a Master Series 3 Plantation, you'll see. And we're touching on this, where there was a standardization in the 20th century, where unfortunately people were more interested with yield and with standardization than they were interested with taste and flavor and intensity. So that was the almighty century of neutral spirits, such as industrial vodka. So the rum funk took a back seat until crazy guys like us and others fell in love with it. And some rum distillers have been holding that. I'm thinking Long Pond and Hamden have been holding the torch while everybody kind of like was wiped out of it. And you know, actually every country used to have their own little secrets about creating their own intensity and rum funk that were tasting different. But Barbados, we're trying to research that as we speak, by the way, by reintroducing wooden vats and long fermentation. Why wooden vats? Because the wood is a little habitat of these yeast and these bacteria that are going to be your signature, much like a levain that a baker would use. So Bert, I don't know if I answered your question, because it's a question that deserves a book and a few years of training, but that I've been through. But you know, this is a question that I love, as you can feel. And you know, these distilleries creating these elements of taste have a whole technique that used to be called the dirty cistern technique in 1860, 1870. That's naturally now called the muck pit. And the muck pit is different than the dunder pit, totally different. And that's called the muck pit. So I just wanted to get a little technical here. It was a technical question. Yeah. And these are very well guarded secret that distilleries will never, ever tell you about. You know, you are sworn into secrecy about the way it's done.
And the best thing for anyone who's trying to absorb all of this very quickly is this is going to be posted on the Facebook and the YouTube afterwards, so you can watch this back and look at it. But I also did post a link to the cocktail wonk in the chat there, so that's a good way to lose a couple of days reading about all types of spirits, but particularly rum.
You're right. You're right. Matt is very educated with this. He's done a lot of research with us, trying to get his facts together. And Matt is all about the facts. And he's the perfect rum spy. You know, he's asked like the very candid questions to try to know everything. And he calls me very, very often. Yeah. I love Matt. Incredible guy. So yeah, one of the few like total perfectionists. You know, he will drill down. And, you know, the same way he was writing codes and stuff when he was working in the Silicon Valley. Obsessive guy. Yeah.
Couple of comments on this rum is that, you know, the nose has that vibrancy and again, a bit of that funk, but just how smooth it finishes. And probably a little bit to what you were saying about the dry finish. Is that, I mean, Plantation, you love to make big flavorful rums. Does texture and smoothness come into it? And what sort of role does that play when you're coming to, you know, in terms of flavor itself?
Well, it's a great question. It's a whole holistic approach, right? Is that we're trying, I always say, we're trying to create poetry for your palate, right? It's all about what are we going to tell you? So here I'm taking you to this very specific place where rich rum exists. You know, this is totally, this is really, as I say, we're very engaged producers. What I'm trying to say with this rum is like, save super flavorful rums, you know, like, this is something where we want to show you that rum can have so much to offer, this floriness, this intensity. And so then it's holistic on your palate. Once you have the flavor experience, if it's well integrated, well aged, and remember with the double aging, we can do this, then you get this whole beautiful experience. How you get this great palate experience also is something, as a master blender here, we call le fondu. Le fondu is the perfect integration. And you know, fondu is always something we strive toward, is the perfect integration of the different elements of the blend. So you're not tasting Barbados on one side and you know, Jamaica on the other side. You actually have you should have, I hope you agree, the perfect integration, and they're creating, same as 3-Star, a very holistic approach that will give you these beautiful aromatics, but in the palate, because it's a blend that was done very progressively, it's fully integrated, so there's no violence about it. I could show you the other way around. If we were together, I could take the ingredients of this blend and blend them right away and give them to you, and they will be fighting like cats and dogs in your mouth. You know, they've been married, they've been mellowed together. That's something that I've learned was taught by a very old guy here in Cognac many, you know, almost 3 decades ago, actually, you know, how to do this. And one of the secret is be patient, leave it time, let it marry in the barrel, and then just blend by little touch, you know, go progressively. So when it's on your palate, you have that holistic experience. Another secret, I must admit, some of you may remember the previous package. We changed the package when I was able to do something full-fledged on this, is that there is a secret of master blenders, the same way that, you know, some bartenders have little secret bitters. The secret bitters of master blenders is to have these super old, supercharged rums that are like in vats and that you can keep, and they're pure rums. They've been aged a long time, sometimes over woody, totally off balance, like a bitter, but that like a tiny little bit of this is going to be your signature, and this one contains that. But to create that signature bonificateur that we call, it takes usually 20 years. That's why we say it takes 20 years for a master blender to be a full-fledged master blender.
Awesome. Do we have any cocktail expertise? A quick, you know, something we could whip up at home from anyone from the proof team there, maybe?
Right. Either Jordan.
Yeah, you might need to.
Sorry, I was on mute. I was on mute then. My favorite with this one is a treacle. So if you make like an old-fashioned style, so just stir it down with some sugar and some bitters, and then add a bit of apple juice, and then a twist of lemon at the end is my go-to with this one.
Yeah, and I do echo some of the comments coming through here that you wouldn't mix it either, and this is why we have professionals on here, because I don't know how to do this. I can't make a gin and tonic, let alone complicated cocktails. So I drink everything, and I think it's very good that way as well.
As for me, I tend to like my cocktails a bit sweet. So if you're like me, a bee's kiss is a good one. So a bit of aged rum, some cream and honey, and big fan of the daiquiri, as we can tell. So if you twist up your daiquiri with dark rum, top it up with the lime, the sugar, shake it up with some mint, and then top it up with champagne. It's also a really, really great twist.
And because it's plantation, it has to be champagne. It can't be sparkling from anywhere else. It has to be from the Champagne region.
Absolutely. Get all the culture in together. Yeah.
Well, thank you guys. That's very inspiring. And, you know, I love to hear your creativity. And again, you know, and you guys know, to make beautiful cocktails, you need beautiful ingredients. And we're trying to do that as well. And I agree also to some of you saying it's a great sipper. To me, it's always a great, you know, wonderful to have. This is a type of rum you can sip on and on. And you got, so now I'm going to take you to Barbados with the Grand Reserve. So back at the distillery, West Indies Rum Distillery. This is where I work usually a week. Thank you, Scott. This is where I work usually a week every month. Right now I'm in Cognac. We cannot travel. We're like probably most of you guys. So I'm at the vineyard in Cognac. And this is where we make Pierre Ferrand, and where we make also Citadel Gin, you know, at the distillery. But otherwise, you see where I work every month for about a week with an incredible team. I pay tribute to these guys. You know, Andrew runs the distillery. Yeah, this is a little background. Some of them, you know, there's a little tagline that you'll see there. It says, "We make Barbados rum." some of these guys. You can see Davin here. You can see John Kinch. John Kinch right there, you know, above my shoulder there, has been at the distillery as a master blender for 40 years. Davin is a young guy that actually we learned later he wanted to work so bad at the distillery. We don't take anybody who's younger than 20 years or something like this. And he lied and he said he was 20 when he was 18 years. And when we discovered, we thought he was so skillful. We say usually, and that was his dream to work at the distillery. He came to France. You have here in the corner, right here, you have somebody very iconic at the distillery, Digger Skinner. Digger has been at the bottom corner, this gentleman with gray hair, has been with the distillery for 41 years. And his father was as a distiller. He's a gentleman that taught me how to use the chamber still and some of the equipment. And he's also, Digger, is the man who wanted to work and to walk in the footstep of his father, who had worked at the distillery for 47 years. So this is for him a family affair when you realize that the family has almost given 9 years of their time to the distillery. It's very humbling when you're a little cognac guy working with these guys. So incredible guys. I could tell you the story about each of them, but they're like I say, incredible crew. So that's West Indies Rum Distillery. This is where the Grand Reserve is born and first aged there. We use, in that case, local molasses from Barbados. As you know, the Caribbean uses their own molasses, but also import from neighboring countries. For plantation in Barbados, we're still able to work with local molasses. It's very unique for Barbados. A lot of it, the molasses are imported. And this is something we wanted to show you, the elegance. You remember we had some rum funk in the original dark. Here we're going full-fledged Barbados. So we were going to have a little nosing together, and you're going to see, what it is. This is a rum that is, 2 to 3 years in the Caribbean and a minimum 1 year, but usually 2 years and up in the cognac barrel, back in cognac barrel.
Alexandre, sorry. Another quick question. Another quick question. Now we're moving on to, we've gone from a bottle that says white rum into dark rum into aged rum. Is that just a color thing, or are there actual production differences? Just very quickly.
Hello. When we talk about the dark rum, usually you have, in the way we look at it, you have a greater extraction of elements of the wood, some bitterness of the wood. Also, in the old days, people used to make in the distilleries their own artisanal caramel to give you that like darker, bittersweet notes. And that's a technique we do respect, as long as it's made with pure, sugar that is made by hand and not using any acid like some guys using caramel in a crazy way. If it's done beautifully, then you got the dark rums. There are no legal category. That's why it's a great question about dark and gold and so on. I wouldn't be so impressed with these names. We call it original dark because we wanted to show you this full flavored original taste of rum when they were quite extracted with the barrels, with these some elements of the tannins here, so the category as white rum, gold rum, and dark rum is a bit deceiving, to be honest with you. I would not so much look into it. If you wanted to categorize rum, I would fully go with the country of origin, much like wine regions. When you think about rum, think about Jamaica, think about each, Barbados, Trinidad, think about the same way you would think Chablis, you would think, by the way, Scotland, you'd think Island, Lowland, and so on. So you have to look at this more by region and by color. And then once you are within the region, doesn't mean that everybody does the same, right? Not all the Isla rum whiskey tastes the same. Some are more petite, less petite, and so on. But you do have styles from one country to the other. So now we're plunging our roots into Barbados, the old distillery of West Indies Rum Distillery. As you know, I'm the humble and proud owner of this distillery since 2017, a dream come true to me. And I say humble because my grandfather always say, who taught me how to make wine, you never own a vineyard. You think you do, you never own a vineyard. you just tend a vineyard from a short lifetime, because, you know, the size, even if you live to 100, you know, the vineyard is looking at you. It's been there for hundreds of thousands of years. Even if you live to 100, you look at this distillery, the guys who built that distillery, the walls that we're looking at right now, were built in 1893. So it was very humbling. And then when you work and you're in the office of this distillery, you have cupboards full of pictures of guys who worked at the distillery. Some of them have been, you know, gone for 80 years, 100 years. And maybe if we're lucky, we'll be in one of these drawers, you know, and some of the guys, you know, 200 years from now say, oh, that was the, you know, these guys making the rum back then. So very humbling and very incredible, very storied distillery. Let me tell you a little bit of the distillery. Debbie's going to show you the vaults, you know, where you see this room here. Let me just get off the picture a little bit. You see the vault where you see Andrew and I in front of a door that is a big metal door that you see here above my shoulder, and then in a metal door in the back. And this vault has been containing old documents since 1893. You see, I'm holding on the picture a document that's actually a document that's got all the shareholders and the history of the distillery since 1901. And Andrew is holding one of the many documents where they write down their technique expertise and their technique experiments. So we're able to research a lot of these documents. So that's the heritage of that distillery. Now, onto this rum. Here we are working with one terroir, wine culture is Barbados. Barbados has a long tradition about using pot still and column still. I'm proud to tell you that this rum contains column rum, but from the beautiful John Doerr column that was built in 1970, and also, a beautiful Greg still that Debbie is showing you right here. You see the team in front of it. You can see this still here. That's the Greg still, and you know how you know it's old. You see these rivets. This still was built in 1850. If you see machine put rivets like that, that's probably late 1800s. If you see hand bitten rivets, that means probably early 1800s, maybe late 1700s. We have a still from the late 1700s that doesn't distill anymore. It's hand bitten rivets. Here it's rivets that were put because in the old days they didn't master welding the same way, so they were riveting the metal, obviously. And I'm proud to tell you that this rum contains some rum distilled in the old Greg Farm still that you're looking at right now in the background with the team in front of it. And that's a beautiful, beautiful, a still that to this day was thick enough to still make rum. So if you wanna nose it with me, I got a first hit of very nice ripe tropical fruit. In the background, some element of vanilla, tiny notes of cinnamon. I don't know about you, but I get also very faint elements of creme brulee and coconut.
I'm getting a bit of like gingerbread, but just straight out of the oven when it's hot.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Totally agreed. Totally agreed, Scott. It's totally there. Absolutely. And then on the palate, we get some of this candied fruit, almost like, you're right, you got the bourbon vanilla type of notes, obviously that comes from the American oak. And I get some nice delicate tannins. And what happens though, these, how we bring forward, Scott, to your point, I was smiling inwardly because, how you bring the double aging makes magic on this. That's why, we're trying to fight to preserve. It's under siege right now, the double aging technique, and which is just 300 or 450 years old, which is magical, and it creates, you can actually use the French oak will bring forward some of the spice notes, whereas the American oak is going to bring forward some of the fruit notes. So when you use both, plus the double aging and the tropical aging, when the interaction with the barrel, you're able to get like this beautiful polishing of the rum itself. a great sipper as well. Actually, you know, I don't know what the guys say about what cocktail we can do on this, but you know, for me, you know, of course, love to sip and would love to hear what they have to say about how they would drink it in a cocktail as well.
Yeah, because it is interesting. And again, I'm not going to pretend to be any sort of cocktail expert, but we're getting into flavors that are subtly different in older rums when it comes to cocktails. So interested what the team have to say on this one. Bring in the experts.
Dialing in.
Yeah, phone a friend.
Yeah. I mean, your big fruity classics that play with the spice and sweet flavors of this rum, such as a pina colada, obviously. Mai Tais are always good. And but if you want something a little bit more refreshing, this one served tall with a bit of mint, chuck in some lime, and topped up with ginger beer is an absolute treat. Works really well with the spiciness.
I'd definitely throw ginger beer at this. Jeremy Carson makes a good point using the term dangerously approachable. In Australia, we call that smashable, I think is the technical term. We use it, smashable.
Perfectly smashable.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you, guys.
Anything to add?
I don't know if you get...
I'd go, like, the two things that jump out for me for this is, like, I don't really want to mess around with it too much. So the one sort of Barbados drink I'd go for would be like the corn and oil. So just over ice, a little bit of lime and some falernum, which is like an alcoholic clove and lime syrup. You don't really see that much on this side of the world. Or to play around with the spice notes, sub it out for cognac in a flip. So egg, cream, shaken, topped up with a bit of nutmeg, just to play with that spice notes.
Yeah, awesome.
Cool. Sounds great. That's great. Thank you, guys.
Yum.
So you see, that's something that's where you can see the Barbados, the elegance, the style that you know, we're bringing forward with this. Now we're gonna jump to actually Central America. That's one of my early creations. That's actually a blend of larger style rum. You see one of the distilleries in Belize here. There's 3 distilleries in Belize. This is one distillery of the Coelho cousins. You know, it's called Old Masters Distillery or Coelho Distillery. There's 2 Coelho distilleries, and it is right next to a sugar mill. Actually, Belize only uses its own. It's still a big producing sugar country, so they use their own molasses still. They are lucky that way. The sugar mill is literally like a couple of 100 yards from this distillery here, for example. We source a lot with the district called Travelers. That's wonderful. Perla Perdomo and her family are wonderful people. You see Perla here on the picture. You see the tiny little column that she's in front right there. That's the column they're using. It's an old Mexican column that was smuggled in the country of Belize like 50 years ago. So it's an old little column, very, very, very small, as you can see. And you can see also, I love to work. You can see me, if you put a picture with Majito, that's the brother of, that's him and I doing some work, you know, in Belize. I love Majito. I see him regularly because, you know, he's the technician there, and great fun time working with these guys. Another picture that I find funny, I take my kids to the different distilleries when I go, and you can see a picture here. I can tell you, this is another distillery, the other Coelho distillery. You can see, I'm in the middle here, but this is my son. And you can see this guy with a rifle, and it's a camouflage rifle. And as you can see, this guy is not kidding. He can lift 120 kilos, you know, about his arms, and he's watching over the stock, you know. And so nobody has ever, I wonder why, but nobody has ever, tinkered with the stock. And when you see this guy, he's pretty serious.
Some distilleries have distillery dogs to protect them. That's going to the next level.
Yeah, this one is very serious. This distillery is right next to a beautiful jungle with a lot of old, Maya ruins. And actually, my son, who loves the nature and the great wild, when he was 12 years old, I remember he went to the jungle and brought back a big venomous snake. We're all nervous, and even the big guy here was saying, you don't do this, you know, this is dangerous. I was like, we're going to try to keep that son. So that's a little experience, you know, of the as a distiller. So great country, Belize, total different taste profile. You're working on the you know, the notes that are more of like old port notes, you know, tobacco notes, licorice notes. This is the stock you see in the background. Thank you, Debbie. That's the, you don't see it much, it's a bit dark, but that's the Traveler's stock. Travelers as an incredible, you're going to have to charge that computer, Debbie. For some reason, it is not charging. Yeah, you need to make sure my computer charges. Sorry, guys, I'm just making sure because otherwise we're going to be cut off. Computer says it's not charging. sorry.
And this is the problem with technology. You can't run it on rum. Back in the day, you could run all the machines on rum. It was far simpler.
The computer, I don't think would. Let me just make sure it is charging. It is this. This thing.
While Alexandre's doing a little bit of fiddling there, yeah, a couple of comments from across the social medias and things, and one that's been echoed a little bit that Phil has said in the Zoom chat is a lot of times with these rums we're seeing on the nose, you know, certain aromas that's very different on the palate, and I think, you know, that's really important. We have a little bit of a chip on our shoulder in Australia with rum that they're very one-dimensional with our history with rum, but you know, rum can be just as complex as any other spirit, and you know, for people coming into rum from other spirits, I think that's important, and probably even more so in a lot of cases, particularly you know, as we saw in some of the early ones, blending different styles and different cultures together essentially. So yeah, you definitely don't judge a rum by its nose or its palate alone.
No, you're right. It's a holistic approach. You know, it's the same thing. You know, it's like a great dish, right? You got these beautiful aromatics, and then you start eating it. And what happens once you put it on your palate, you have the palate feel, obviously, right? The acidity, the sweetness, and so on, the viscosity, but also you got the retroolfaction. So actually, it's telling your body different things and different levels of pleasure. You don't access different things. I always say a great spirit is not just a picture, it's a movie or a fireworks of flavors, but it's like a movie. It tells you a story. And actually, I have a little secret for you, but of course the spirit buffs know this. Once you taste a spirit, and if it's rich enough, it's gonna keep on going at you in the glass. If you go back to the older glasses, they're still gonna deliver flavors. So if we taste that one real quick, the Gran Tañero, you know, so it's different culture there. I don't know if you're with me here, but I get you know, the elements of the woods. It's a slightly lighter bodied rum, so you're gonna have elements of the wood that are gonna show a little better, a little more. I got some nice tobacco notes, little licorice notes, sherry notes, spices, and then on the palate and the retroolfaction, I definitely get this elements of old port, you know, that you get, and so a little more viscosity, maybe not the same level of elegance of the Grand Reserve, but like a great mouth feel experience, and something again very sippable. And the wood is more present because it's a little lighter body, so you get that right there with you.
Yeah. Particularly just on the back of the tongue there, that spice just sort of jumps up and gives another dimension to it. For me, at least, that's what I sort of get from it.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So that was our foray, you know, into Central America, and I love the guys. It's a dominant with Belize for sure. I love the guys what they're doing at Belize. They're very good friends. The Perdomo family, especially from Travelers, but also the two other distilleries are great. And so very long-standing relationship we have with these guys, and you know, and I see them regularly because you know, we see each other in the Caribbean also because they're part of the West Indies Rum Distillery Association that we're all part of. So that's one of the very special babies as well. If you guys are okay, we're gonna jump in with the Jamaica Special Dry, one of my latest baby, the youngest baby on this range for me in terms of creation. The Jamaica Special Dry was my attempt, my desire, my dream to go to Jamaica full blown. and basically with all gun blazing. You know, we're not watering down. It is not blended with colon still. This is 100% pot still rum. You ought to know that less than 5 or even 2% of the rum sold in the world, I mean this, once bottled, is 100% pot still rum. I'm talking volume wise. So this is it is very rare. This is a delicious Jamaican rum. That's a blend from Clarendon and Lone Pond. So Clarendon is a distillery. You see in the background here that luckily when we purchased West Indies Rum Distillery, it's a very storied distillery that had invested and owns a third of national rum of Jamaica in Jamaica. So I have the privilege to be part of the team at both Long Pond Distillery and Clarendon Distillery. Can you imagine? I mean, I feel so humbled doing this. And, you know, I can show you, remember there was Ben's question early on about the fermentation vat. If you don't show us, Debbie, I'm there next to the fermentation vat. I remember this picture you see here. This is typical, what you see here in the background. I'm not even sure I'm allowed to show you. This is a fermentation at Clarendon for long fermentation. You see on the top, these are cane stalk. You're not using it to give it a cane taste. You use it for the yeast from the cane field. Remember the question we got at the beginning, the yeast is mastered here with specific technique, and these are fermenting for up to 3 weeks. You know, a lighter rum fermentation is 72 hours. So 3 weeks of fermentation to get the extraction of that rum funk. So that's very specific. So this is Clarendon. I'm going to show you also something you will never be able to see again, including me, because it burned down to ashes, is the old, it felt like a church when you came in, and we rebuilt it luckily with the same wood, with the same techniques. It's the fermenting tank, the fermenting room of Lone Pond. This is beautiful. When you are there, it was a total silence and the rum bubbling up and fermenting since the late 1700s. Unfortunately, it burned down a year and a half ago. Luckily, we're rebuilding it thanks to some guys in Mexico with the same techniques, the same wood. So we're making rum again with that. That's the Long Pond fermenting vat rooms. And that's what this rum was made. So that's why, by the way, on that bottle, if you look at the packaging, well, not on the little one, but on the bigger one, there's a little thing that says Long Pond, forever, or, like forged by fire, because this distillery has had different fires. This is one of the 2 remaining distilleries that kept the tradition of the muck pit. So if you pour this rum in a glass, you'll see the right away where I'm taking you to a different country. Remember, we're talking about the classifications of rum again. Think countries, think cultures. Don't think colors, think cultures. Here, what do you get in the nose? Fruit flavor, banana, cooked banana, orange peel, pineapple, slight smokiness. Do you get all of this? Totally different world, right?
Yeah.
I'm taking you somewhere totally different.
This, I have to admit, and the team at Proof won't be surprised by this at all, but this is, been probably my favorite plantation in the past 24 months to new one to come out. And we've just had quite a good question from Vish from the Brisbane Rum Club, and we do have people listening from all over Australia, from Western Australia, from regional Victoria, from Queensland. What's the difference between this one, the special dry, and the previous Jamaican vintages like the 01 and the 2005 and that sort of thing?
Well, that's a great question. When you do a vintage, you're really showing, it's like a slice of sashimi. There's no preparing, assembling element to create a dish. It's like the material. That's what the vintages are about with plantation. Here, we're going to use different barrels from 2 different distilleries from different years. And it's a wide range blend. I mean, the youngest is 2 years, the oldest is 17 years in this blend. So I get to create balance, intricacy, complexities. It's like a piece of mahogany that you get to polish. So all the veins of the wood is showing, or a beautiful diamond that you get to cut. So all the light of that diamond shines. Whereas when it's a vintage, it's like that raw piece of wood. There's beauty to it as well. We're just showcasing different things. I love the question, by the way. So it's a great question, because it's the heart of my job, you know. And so here with the vintage, again, we're trying to show you that slice of, very specific, and that each vintage is going to be different. Here, I'm able to create something that's very late 19th century, which were the tradition for the rum buffs of the Jamaican, true Jamaican, 100% plumber rum. And I was not sure that I was going to be understood with this, because this is something that was not out there for many years. And I'm gonna brag a little, and I apologize because these are my babies. So this one has been in 14 months garnering, 14 gold medals and excellency level medals. And so why I'm proud of this is that I'm saying, yeah, people got it. That's wonderful, because when you're a rum distiller or rum blender, you're like a musician. You're happy when people like your music. I can tell you that. And we have a daughter, my wife and I, who's a composer. So that's something that's wonderful. So I hope you like this one. It's also a great baby. And then on the palate, I get still the, a little elements of pineapple, a little coconut milk, Old Spice.
Just an interesting, a really interesting comment, Alexandra. Like this photo particularly, I think has resonated with a few people watching. And it's, rum is a holy experience, and yes, it looks like a church. And one of our probably most unique and innovative distillers in Australia is a bloke called Peter Bignell, down in Tasmania, who grows his own rye to make rye whiskey. And he just commented saying, "I love the spider webs hanging over the fermenters. I know a place a little bit like that." And yes, it's his back shed where everything he's built himself, his own still. So yes, yeah, I think Peter, you probably need to get over there and take a look at some of these places. You'd have a bit of fun, I think. But I had to mention that.
That's wonderful. Well done to you. Yeah, it's all about, distilling. It's all about fulfilling a dream. That's what it is. And started, I was 22 years old, 23 years old, so I know exactly. And I'm much older now. I'm 54, and I'm still pursuing the same dream. So cheers to you, Pete. So you see the.
I love this rum so much. This is just, for me, perfect.
This is my daughter's Ariane favorite. I must say she is drinking age, guys. And she's a composer. She's doing music. That's her favorite. That's her favorite. And yeah. So I'm glad you like that. And I'm gonna toot a little bit. I'm a proud father. She just dropped a song. Ariane. Her name is Ariane, and she dropped. She's doing different songs. So if you want to follow her, you'll see.
Yeah. You might
drop the SoundCloud in the comments.
Yeah, you might need to send us a link.
She's a pop singer, and she went to Berklee School of Music. She's been. I'm a failed musician, and my music is that's my little songs, and she's doing the music, and you'll see her. Yeah, Ariane. So, and we're going to finalize, and thank you guys for this. We're going to finalize by the ultimate sipper, the rum that's like drinks like a cognac, which is our XO. And I'm going to make a little confidence to you. This is the only rum that I didn't make. This is made by my team in total secrecy. This was a present for my 30th anniversary at the head of Maison Ferrand. Last year, we celebrated my 30th year. So this one has been around for 11 years. And that's the XO. And that's kind of a show off technically, that's like a integration, many different barrels, very old, rum in there, quite structured, mellow, extremely long finish. A lot of cinnamon notes. We're back in Barbados about elegance, complexity. No, Barbados, they're like the French, you know, they are very conservative culture. They don't throw anything away. You know, when you are at the distillery in Barbados, you have some stills that are there and people don't throw them away, even though they don't use them. Thank God. So we're able, my dream until I retire, hopefully many years from now, is to actually put back to work all these incredible stills, including a Blair Collin that was making the Navy rum during Second World War. Is just looking at me and saying, pay attention to me and fix me up. And it's going to be making rum again. We fixed something called a chamber still. If Pete is a distiller, he might know a chamber still. There's only, I only knew it from books. And there's one left from the 19th century. Chamber still were invented by the rye producers of America from East Coast America. If you search it on internet, the work of Dr. David Wondrich, the research he's done about chamber still. And guess what? There's one that was sleeping in the corner somewhere, West Indies Rum Distillery, that we fixed up, and that's making rum again. And so all these things is the destiny of this beautiful distillery and what we're doing with that. So, you know, this rum contains a lot of rum from the pot still, the Greg Farm, which is the 1850 still that is still working right now. And I'm going to give you a little confidence here. As we speak, we are finalizing a still drawn from our old archives, because the Greg Farm is starting to show that in about 20 years it will need to retire. So we are building a still from the drawings from old copper to make a still that's going to progressively take over. That's going to be the little baby of the Greg Farm. We're actually looking for a name for it, and I had the privilege of having an incredible coppersmith draw it with me from the old archives, you know, called Mr. David Pym from Jandor. So this is the baby here. I don't know if you do, I get the cinnamon notes right now, the spicy note right on my nose, vanilla, a little bit of almost like milk, chocolate. I get the spicy cake notes, remember, that you were mentioning in the early years.
One of the comments from the Zoom chat here is Lamington. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Lamington.
No, I'm not. Explain.
An Australian sort of cake that is covered in like a chocolate sauce with coconut on it. Very, very famous.
Maybe he's in the back. Maybe he's in the back, and she's saying, "This is the best cake."
Yeah. No. So yeah, feels up. In fact, a few people are jumping on, getting Lamingtons there.
Yeah, she's saying it's the best. So I really want to thank you, all of you guys, from this experience, you know, doing this together. Debbie's throwing in some of the team here. I'm just gonna shrink to tell you some of the guys we have here are Winston Harrison, somebody who died brutally, unfortunately, a talented man. Some of the guys there, but there's many others. I'm looking if we see Flavia. No, Flavia is not in that picture. But we see somebody here called Neil. Neil is the guy that taught me a lot, Neil Glasgow. And he's an old gentleman that's been in rum. He's 70 years old, 72 years old, has been in rum forever. So all these guys are incredible. And have been, you know, they are from, some are Jamaica and some Barbados that were with me. As you can see, we're doing barrel samples there. That was a session in Jamaica in the middle of the cane fields in Clarendon Estate, you know, Moneymusk Estate. So, and also, I'm proud to tell you that we are getting more and more vested in farming, both, you know, in Clarendon and in Long Pond, you know, so to have our own cane and our own, you know, substract that we distill, you know, right at the foot of the distillery, both in the worries of sustainability, of course, but also of controlling the quality of what we distill, the same way we do with Ferrand Cognac having our own vineyards, and with Citadel Gin having, I'm actually looking behind the screen, there's a field of juniper fields that, you know, are growing to make Citadel Gin. So I really want to thank everybody. I want to thank the team at Proof. I want to thank everybody for their patience and being with me. That's so nice for me to do this. I wanted to show you the little slide, Debbie, if you want to show with the guys at the cellars. That's one of my favorite pictures. You see a picture of Don. Don has been with West Indies Rum Distillery for 21 years, extremely talented man. You see with me here on the other side, Dario, who was a professor from the university in Barbados, and who joined us to do research about yeast and the old way of fermentation. And he came with on a 1-year leave, and he decided to never go back to the university. He feels that, the yeast and distilling at West Indies Rum Distillery is much more fun. He calls the yeast his babies, and he likes taking care of his babies. So I really cheer to all of you guys and to all these wonderful team I'm so fortunate to be working with. Cheers to everyone, and please stay safe. All right, Scott, if you have a few questions, I can take them, and then I'm sorry, I'm going to have to run because the guys are downstairs waiting for me. We're running a farm, but I'm more than happy to listen to a few questions.
Yeah, look, and there's a flurry of questions, and certainly not enough time to get through all of this. Very, very knowledgeable of the fact that you probably have a whole day of work ahead of you, whereas everyone here is sort of finished up for the day. One thing, and there's a lot of technical stuff, but there is one thing I wanted to ask that's come up a couple of times tonight, is the logo, the Plantation logo, which everyone's got on the bottles there. Where does that come from?
It came from an old book, a very old book that I was reading about the Caribbeans, and it's about the African heritage of the Caribbean. And that was a tribute that we decided early on to pay tributes, to that. And also this logo I found was almost like a sign to me, because as I was visiting some of the artifacts of some of the early Indians of Jamaica next to Clarendon Distillery had settlements of early Indians. They had artifacts and symbols that were not similar, different, but in the same kind of vein. And so it's paying tributes really to all the people that are part of rum making. It's not just the Westerners arriving and distilling. It's about people, that the rum is the fruit, as you know, of literally, life and blood and of many people, and for the better and for worse, by the way, as a lot of products, and it's paying tribute to the multiple facets of rum, and not forgetting we're tasting delicious things. A lot of people work very hard, and some people willingly and some people unwillingly making delicious rum. So it's like the Pyramid of Egypt kind of thing, and that's a tribute to that heritage.
Yeah, so there's a few technical questions, and Vish on the Facebook there had a couple of quite in-depth questions about dosage and that sort of thing. What I might do is I might work with the team at Proof & Co. and get those answers, and we can direct to those people individually. But there was a couple of comments about being.
If you want to, sorry. If you want me to jump in on dosage, because of course this is something that's one of the many aspects of heritage of rum. There's a very simple answer to this, but of course we could, it's part of the many heritages of rum. And one of the heritage of rum is that people in the old days didn't buy the industrial caramel from a few companies, some made in Chicago, some made in France, some made in Canada, and so on. But each distillery made their own caramel. That's an established fact. In fact, Trinidad still make their caramel. Barbados, West Indies used to. We still have the old 19th century cauldron to make the caramel from such a long time ago. They were using their local sugars to do this. Barbancourt, still makes their own. And so, the Marara distillers and so on, and they still makes their own. And right now it was kept kind of a, little secret about making beautiful things. We are not so much in favor of while we respect it, I became much more tolerant as I aged about the industrial caramel, but we believe more into what is called caramelized sugar, which in English, in French, and in English called burnt sugar. So instead, you're not really looking for color. We don't care about the color. It's about the taste we care about. And so in the old days, why people did this, including Navy rum, by the way, Navy rum was using these techniques until the early 20th century. We know that from all the research that we've done with Matt Pietrek and Dave Wondrich and so on. So we're walking in these footsteps. And when we feel that some rums benefit from bringing forward certain flavor elements by using this technique we call dosage, you know, which is really the old burnt sugar technique, then we use it. It is not just, it's not like adding sugar to rum, not all. People, you know, think that's what it is. Not. It's about actually, you know, slightly caramelizing some local sugar and then aging them in some rum, the same rum you will use, and using tiny quantities as part of the making of the rums. Some of the plantation rums feel that like get such a beautiful taste. It's what it does. It opens certain elements of flavors. So some rum, you know, benefit from them, and some rum are better without. That's the art of the master blender. And by the way, that is true with a lot of other spirits such as Calvados, Armagnac, and Cognac. The rum has, I must say, a bit, controversially probably, but rum has more legitimacy to that because it's actually a local product that is used to make it. Whereas, you know, in the, you know, for the other spirits, they have to import it from the Caribbeans. So I've been defending this technique because I think it makes beautiful rum, and using it, but yet I have been the, one of the lobbyists to push for limiting the technique of, dosage and caramel to 20 grams per liter, because, you know, it's like the salt in the dish. You don't want the salt to take over. You want these elements of making it delicious. And again, also I've been pushing that this technique doesn't use any additives such as acidity and so on, which caramel usually uses to be made of, but is made totally naturally from the products, and if possible from the local sugar production, which is the case of Barbados, Fiji, Jamaica, Demerara, Belize, and so on. In some countries, unfortunately, don't have sugar mills anymore, so they have to import their molasses. So in that case, you have to import it. So I didn't, you know, of course we could discuss it much more, but I wanted to be very clear.
It's a whole another hour. It's a whole hour conversation that we could do.
Yeah, but I just wanted to touch on this because that's something that's a bit, either very well understood by technicians or misunderstood. And the idea here again, so we tend to not be in sync with people using the 150A caramel, you know, called spirit caramel straight off. We had used some. We have one that uses some, is the overproof because of that like little bitterness that you get, and that's very historical, you know. So in that case, we don't use the industrial form, but we burn the sugar all the way to get this specific experience that was very like beginning of 20th century, you know, again, very part of the heritage, and otherwise using the very, very, very antique and ancient technique. And actually, we're about to use the old cauldrons from Barbados. Thank God that they're all copper cauldrons that have been salvaged from the beginning of 20th century, late 1800s. Thanks for the question.
Yeah, look, thank you very much. As is going, I don't know if you guys can see the chat, and particularly Debbie. There's a lot of people thanking Debbie for her hard work tonight in making this happen behind the scenes. And someone, Yvette Myhill, who I believe is tuning in from regional Victoria, commented that you're quite a cool dad. So are you and Debbie adopting at any point in time?
We actually, we love people. We love to have people around, you know, and everywhere. We always have people at the house. It's the first time in the, we've been married with Debbie more than 20 years. It's the first time in our marriage that we have nobody at home, either at the chateau here at the estate, or, you know, and so we are so sad people can't, because of this bloody virus, we cannot have anybody visiting us. So we are adopting all the time. We love having people. We love it. And
I just want to fill you in quickly before we all let go. I ran a quick poll for everyone to say what did you love tonight? And a lot of people complained that they could only vote for one thing, but otherwise they would vote for all 6 of the rums. But I think everyone's pretty much completed it now, and it's a 3-way tie for the favorite rum tonight. 25% each for the Grand Reserve, the Grand Anejo, and the 20th anniversary, with the special dry, which is my favorite, at only 1 vote behind that. So if I put that up, that's a 4-way tie. But I think that's a bit of a testament to Plantation. And I just want to say, thank you so much. I know when you're in Australia, it's so busy. The bartenders just drag you from one way to another, and you can't even get in the door. It's so busy. So thank you for taking the time out. We scratched the surface. We didn't even talk about juniper berries for longer than 30 seconds, which, we could talk for an hour about. So thank you very much. And thank you, I want to say and they don't always get the credit, is Dub and Jordan and the whole team from Proof. I can see Charlie's watching here today, and there was some people on the Facebook as well. These are the people that make this happen, that Scotty comes up with a stupid idea late at night one night, sends Dub a text, and Dub has to go and make it happen, and Jordan has to sort of polish it. So thank you, everyone. Again, if you guys can't see the chats here across the board, there's a lot of people really appreciative of your time. And we can't all be in the same room at the moment, but at least if I can have the same background, we look like we can pretend we're in the same room and sharing rums with friends, which is what it's all about. So
that's funny.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. Thank you. And I want to thank everybody for using these products, whether behind the bar or at home. It is, and I'm talking like a guy who's making music, and it is a way for us to be able to continue pursuing this dream. We make rums that we believe in. Every one of these bottles, this is really our expression. So thank you for using them, for loving them. This means so much to us. So thanks again, and love to do this again. Thank you very much.
Let's make it happen. Thank you, Alexandra.
Thank you, Alexandra.
All right. Bye, thanks.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Thanks, Alexandra. Thanks, Debbie.
All right.
Bye, Debbie. While they log off, there's a few questions about full bottles for just the crew still here. Yes, we will. Dub's going to make some cocktails. We will post those. Well, I haven't actually asked Jordan this yet, but Jordan, can we please have those recipes to write down and email to people? If not, we can watch the video back. I'll go and do that. But also there is, and I know you've all been very responsible tonight, and only drunk 15 mils of each rum. I know every one of you has measured out 15 mils at home. I know you've got plenty left, but there is a price list that I put up. If you did want any of full-size bottles, there's also some very rare stuff that there's only 2 or 3 bottles left in the country of the Extreme. So that's available at some quite good pricing, thanks to the Proof team. But I'll repost that. But this is the part of the tasting now that it's officially finished, and we're all sort of sitting around talking, and Dub's going to make a cocktail. So you don't have to go anywhere. We might kill the. Actually, I'm going to leave the Facebook and YouTube going for a little bit longer. They deserve to know how to make a cocktail as well. Dub, please take your mute off. I don't think I can do it.
I'm off. My bad.
Beautiful. You're back.
You had to think after 4 weeks of lockdown, I would have learned how to do that. I was just saying, leave the Facebook up because my bigger sister's just logged in and is stalking me. This is probably one of my all-time favorite cocktails, and with the Jamaica is an absolute banger. So it's a classic Mai Tai. So big double measure of the Jamaica, and then is that all in shot there? I can hard bartending sitting down.
We can see everything apart from your face, which I think is the appropriate way to do things.
Mate, that's winning. This is another product from Alexander. Aside from gin, cognac, rum, gin, whatever else he wants to make, he also makes some banging liqueurs. So I mentioned earlier that this is probably one of the first bottles that's gone in my home bar since lockdown. This is Curacao, so it's an old school orange liqueur, great for margaritas, on the rocks, on pancakes, as you were saying before. So half a measure of that, a little bit of fresh lime juice. And then it should have orgeat, which is an almond syrup, but just before Christmas, I ran out and ended up with Crawley's pineapple and almond syrup, which is not a bad substitute at all. A couple of dashes of bitters. Give it a wee taste, make sure it's balanced first of all. It's been a while.
And are you going to get on your bike and now deliver this to all 4 corners of Australia?
Well, look, if the borders weren't shut, I might think about it. And I also don't have a bike either.
Ellie, to answer your questions, we don't have the dry curacao right at the moment, but I've just jumped online and it is in the New South Wales warehouse. So as of, what's today? No one knows what date it is anymore. Probably Friday, maybe Monday. We'll have it in here at the Oak Barrel.
Okay, get it to you tomorrow, mate.
Yeah, cool. The pineapple and almond syrup we don't have, but we do have the orgeat from Crawley's, I think. I don't know. I'd have to get up and actually do some work and step away from where all the rums are to actually check on that one for you. So that's probably going to be a tomorrow question, or tomorrow answer at least, because I'm pretty enjoying myself with the rums here. Yeah, definitely tomorrow. Thank you everyone as well for your questions tonight.
That's my time.
Do you know a Ruth Emily?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, she says g'day. Well, she says holla, but I translated that into g'day from the Facebook. So was that the like ultimate alpha play of just making a cocktail that no one else can taste right now?
Oh mate, it's up there. It's definitely up there.
Oh dear.
No, you go. I was trying to fill the blanks there.
You know, I was just going to say thank you, because what this is about to descend into is just people drinking. And what we might do, if anyone at home wants to, who's watching in the attendees at Zoom, you know, might get them up to share some video and that sort of stuff. Only if they want to have a bit of a chat with us as well. But we might wrap up on the Facebook and the YouTube. So thank you everyone for tuning in there. Thank you for all your questions. I know we didn't quite get to everything. Turns out Alexandra can talk quite a while about certain things and has quite a wealth of knowledge, as we all knew was going to happen. So any questions we didn't get to, and I know Brett and Michelle, there was one in the Zoom chat here that I want to investigate because I'm quite interested in that as well. But for those playing at home on the Facebook and the YouTube, thank you very much. Scott@oakbarrel.com.au is the email. More than, you know, send me through any more questions. And you know, this is all live. It's going to be live in about 15 minutes for you to watch back. And if there's anything that you wanted to listen to again, it's there for you. But thank you very much. I'm going to turn that stream off and go full after party in the Zoom chat.
So they just stick their hands up now and they go live?
No, I have to promote it.